believe now more than ever, we must elect courageous leaders. I am a third generation, third district resident, and a third generation businesswoman. My grandfather started Jackson Graves, a chain of women's clothing stores, in 1946. My dad, after he served in the Army, joined the family business and opened the Southdale store. And then I, after completing college, followed in his footsteps and joined the family business. I then went to Tonka Toys, where I did their promotions, public relations, and marketing communications, and ended a 20-year business career as the first woman vice president general manager at Navarre Corporation, leading their largest division, the computer products division. When I went to Navarre, that division was $25 million in sales, and when I left, it was $200 million in sales. I stepped back from the business world to be home with 4 teenagers, yes, 4 teenagers, and then I went on to the Minnesota Senate. But I will tell you, those lessons I learned in business have stayed with me today, and I know they'll stay with me into the future. The importance of having a sound strategy, the importance of using creativity and innovation to meet the challenges we face, and perhaps most importantly, bringing discipline to everything that we do. And as I prepared for today, I was reminded of just how closely we work together, how your priorities have actually been my priorities. And I have been so grateful that the Minnesota Chamber, the Twin West Chamber, and the NFIB have endorsed my candidacy 3 different times in my elections. And that is because we have agreed on tax policy. So just a little correction, Representative Paulson, I didn't vote for that tax increase. I actually voted against that tax increase, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. However, we worked on tax policy and education. As I became chair of higher ed, I listened to students. I went all over the state and heard about their despair regarding their crushing debt, and I listened to businesses say they couldn't fill the jobs. And so I reached out to the Minnesota Chamber. Together we created the Pipeline Project, a program that has been recognized nationally and has been written about twice in Forbes magazine. I will bring that kind of creative approach to problem solving with me to Congress. This Congress, as Representative Paulson has said, has been remarkably ineffective. So I would say to you, if your business isn't effective and would you say, I want to keep the leaders in place because they're nice guys, or would you say, no, it's time for a change and bring leaders there who have a track record of turning things around? So thank you very much.
All right, transportation, and please address specific funding proposals you might have for this. Senator?
Well, thank you very much for that question, and I know transportation has been one of the most important priorities of the Chamber. I am reminded of the 35W bridge collapse. I bet everyone in this room remembers where you were on that day. That bridge collapse became a symbol of everything that's wrong with our transportation system. And yet, following that, we came together and we put together a comprehensive transportation bill for the first time in 10 years. I have repeatedly been willing to vote for unpopular taxes. This is the one area where I vote for tax increases, and that is taxes that fund our infrastructure and our transportation system. So I think we have to have a comprehensive approach to funding. The gas tax is not going to work long term because our vehicles are less efficient. We need to be innovative and creative. They talk about a miles traveled approach, and right now I think we would all say we're not ready yet, because do we want a little computer following everywhere we go? There has to be a conversation, though, about what we've got isn't working. In addition, we've said that local jurisdictions have to fund transit operations, and so we have a patchwork of solutions, and we have an uneven, comprehensive transit system all over our country. We have to, as leaders, be willing to prioritize transportation, the ability to move goods and services, as well as having a national approach to a multimodal transportation system. We have not been able to do the job of funding the Southwest Light Rail, which has been a top priority of this chamber, because people have been unwilling to take those tough votes. So I am somebody who would say, it costs something and you have to pay for it. And I promise you, I will bring your commitment to transportation with me as I go to Congress.
All right, right, thank you very much. Congressman Paulson, Senator Bonoff says she might be open to a gas tax increase. It has not been raised at the federal level, I believe, since 1993. Is that something you would consider, or do you have other ideas for providing infrastructure funding?
I actually do have other ideas on providing infrastructure funding. Transportation is a critical function of government, especially long-term funding. Actually, the good news is, just at the end of last year, for the first time in a decade, we passed a bipartisan 5-year reauthorization where we gave a lot of money back to the states. They have to match that money, obviously. I know the state legislature is still in swallowing, has not been able to come up with a plan on their transportation needs. But at the federal level, we have a 5-year authorization. It gives certainty, it gives predictability, it gives planning. I am more in favor of not supporting gas tax because I don't think that is a viable option for the long term, just given high mileage vehicles, less people traveling, et cetera. But we should be looking at using energy royalties and expansion of that. I've done proposals with Congressman Tim Walz bipartisanly to say we should put all of that money into infrastructure, into new projects in transportation. In fact, it was scored to be the highest investment in infrastructure ever in the history of the country. But it takes time and it takes planning. And we have an administration right now that quite honestly has not been interested in expanding those energy royalties in that direction. And I do want to make one correction too, because Terri had mentioned that she supported the gas tax, but not the taxes, but she did vote for, in 2009, for a 4th tier in the income tax, so $1 billion tax increase, as well as other sales tax increases, and as well as the gas tax. So I just do believe that we have opportunities to fund transportation in other unique methods that are more long-term oriented, that can fund other infrastructure projects, including locks and dams across the board.
As a follow-up, you've got 30 seconds on your time, so I'll ask you this. You talk about these royalties and unique ways of funding it. Is that enough for the massive transportation needs that we have in this nation?
It actually is, but the trick is to get ahead of it now and plan ahead of time, because once the 5-year reauthorization ends, you can't just snap it and turn it back on. That's why Congressman Walz and I and Congressman Tim Murphy from Pennsylvania have been pushing this idea internally, and leadership has not embraced it, quite honestly. But again, it was scored to be the largest investment in infrastructure in the history of the country. So there is adequate money, and given our energy capabilities now and more domestic production, we should be channeling these resources into transportation infrastructure.
Clarification.
She gets 1 minute for clarification.
Thank you very much.
This is one of those unlikely events.
So, as I understand it actually, that there was a transportation bill passed, but the funds were only appropriated for 1 year. And the transportation bill that was passed was really just to cover the inflationary increases and did nothing to modernize our transportation system. So while one can be pleased that something did get passed, and I don't blame you, I wish I was standing here today saying that our special session had already happened. I don't blame you for saying that was good, but I wouldn't want anyone in this room to be left with the impression that we've handled our transportation problems, because we have not. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Bonoff. Let's move on now to health care and health insurance and Congressman, the Affordable Care Act. Is that something you would still favor, or do you think it just needs to be reformed?
Well, first of all, it's absolutely certain that Obamacare has been a disaster. People are paying more for their premiums. People have had fewer choices for their doctor or for their health plans, despite being promised to have premiums being lowered by $2,500. And so I know Terri helped vote to bring Obamacare here to Minnesota with MNsure. That has also been a disaster. Premiums have gone up double digits. We've now seen one of our major insurance providers exiting the market, with 100,000 more individuals now being without health insurance options. And so I don't think we need more mandates from Washington with a one-size-fits-all approach. But I do think this comes back to the opportunity of injecting more competition. And we do have an alternative plan that is a better way forward. Competition with being able to buy and sell insurance across state lines. Preventative medicine and wellness models that should be incorporated into care. Paying for value over volume and quality over quantity. And not just rewarding the number of procedures that are done, but an activity, but actually rewarding results. I'm actually sponsoring legislation for chronic care management, a bipartisan bill with Senator Ron Wyden, who is the ranking member of the Finance Committee of the Senate. He's a pretty liberal senator from Oregon. But we agree that chronic care management in Medicare is an opportunity to make a difference and save money on healthcare costs by rewarding taking care of the patient, so it's literally well care and not sick care. Because today Medicare companies, 68% of the people under Medicare today have 2 or more chronic conditions, consuming 93% of all Medicare costs. And so if we actually care for the patient, we have a chance to reform that. Also, healthcare savings accounts is another opportunity. I know a lot of you in this room have healthcare savings accounts because 800,000 people in Minnesota use those high deductible plans. But we need to make them more flexible and allow more people like military veterans and our seniors to gain access to those options as well.
Just in 10 seconds, would you vote again to scrap the Affordable Care Act in all aspects of it to start over?
The only provisions that come to mind that I like about the Affordable Care Act would be keep your young children on your parents' policy through age 26. We already have that in the state of Minnesota, right? Cover pre-existing conditions. There are better ways to do that, and the state of Minnesota was getting it right until that one-size-fits-all came down from Washington.
Senator Bonoff, your view of what should be done with the Affordable Care Act?
Yeah, thank you. We cannot go backwards to the days where pre-existing conditions were not covered and our young people weren't able to be on their parents' policies, and where we actually had caps on benefits. This is very personal to me. I have a son with a very serious chronic health disease, and were it not for the Affordable Care Act, he would not have access to extremely expensive drugs and excellent and outstanding health care. Now, having said that, when the Affordable Care Act was introduced, I wrote a letter to the entire congressional delegation, sent one to each of them saying, you should apply essentially for a waiver, because Minnesota had gone so much farther than any other state. We had the least uninsured and the lowest cost. We didn't get that. So then MNsure was proposed, and I listened to Jay McLaren from Medica, who was in my office saying, hey, they want to tell us which products can be on the exchange and who could be on the exchange. And so I voted no the first time that proposal happened, and then I used that no vote to influence the conference committee process, and that piece came out of the legislation. What I would do specifically today is I would, number one, allow the federal government to negotiate drug prices. I don't know why that's not happened. And number two, with regard to these exchanges, which are very problematic because they're filled with too many sick people, high-risk people, and they're people without incomes. And so what I would do is say, small business, you can have pre-tax dollars to fund your employees to go to the private market. By doing that, you send healthy people to the private market, and actually you would have a chance of saving these exchanges, which really are in trouble. With regard to Congressman's votes, he has voted over 50 times to repeal. I think that rigidity of Congress to, instead of rolling up their hands and solving these problems, the health insurance companies aren't asking for repeal, the hospitals aren't asking for repeal, the public's not saying repeal, they're saying help us. The burdens are tremendous. Please help us. Don't repeal, repeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Your time is up.
I'd like to respond.
I thought you might. Go ahead.
First of all, no one wants to go backwards, but we have gone backwards here in the state of Minnesota because we were doing everything right. We were the second most, I think, uninsured state in the country. Premiums were at a reasonable level, but right after the law went into effect, they were going up double digits. That continues to happen. And, you know, one of the first and most important votes that a member of Congress will cast when they get elected is who the speaker's going to be. And I'm going to vote for Paul Ryan. Terry's going to vote for Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is how we got the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And again, you have to pass the bill and find out what's in it. I think that is the wrong approach, and the one-size-fits-all for mandates from Washington is not the direction to go.
All right. You can have 30 seconds.
I don't think Eric ought to say who I'm voting for leader, so I would just suggest that he not say. Believe me, it wouldn't be Paul Ryan. I to run. It wasn't a call. It was Donald Trump that got me to run. I'm running because Donald Trump is in this race. That's why
I thought his name might come up. We'll get back to Donald Trump here in a few moments. By the way, Nancy Pelosi did not handpick me to be here today. So make sure everybody's clear about who Nancy Pelosi is picking and not picking. Let's move on to trade policy. We will get back to Donald Trump, I promise. And Senator Bonoff, I'll start with you on this next question about trade. Considering that 95% of the world's consumers live outside the United States, do you support a robust free trade agenda that expands opportunities in new global markets? Please explain your position.
Yes, I do. I'm a strong believer in the importance of free trade, and we are so fortunate in our community, in the 3rd Congressional District and in our state, to have so many Fortune 500 companies, to have these multinational companies leading the world in the global marketplace. We owe our businesses the ability to have an environment that protects their interests, that levels the playing field, and so I support TPP. Frankly, I don't understand how then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton could negotiate the TPP and then now as candidate not support it. I do support it, and that's another difference where I actually have a track record of standing up to my party when I disagree, and so you can count on that, and I know that's actually why you've endorsed me those last 3 times, is because I do have that track record, and I will continue doing that. I also think if we weren't to enact the TPP, we actually open the door for China to have an outsized role in that region, and that is not in the best interest of our country.
All right, Congressman Paulson, where do you stand on the Trans-Pacific Partnership and other issues related to free trade?
Well, on trade, it is absolutely essential that the United States engage and have a robust trade agenda, and I have been an active and stalwart supporter of having that agenda. With 95% of the world's consumers living outside the United States, 80% of the world's purchasing power being outside the United States, it only makes sense we want to sell American services and American goods and export at every opportunity that we have. I co-chair the TTIP caucus, as you mentioned, which is an opportunity to have a new agreement with our European allies. So it's not just the Trans-Pacific Partnership where we have a new opportunity to engage with 12 countries involved there and make sure that the United States is going to be a counterweight to China, that we are going to be part of the global equation where we're going to see growing influence and the center of economic gravity for new competition coming from Asia, but also in continents like Europe, where we have our best friends and allies, but also an opportunity to streamline regulations, testing certifications, procedures, the facilitation and movement of goods and services more effectively and more efficiently. And I am a member of the Trade Subcommittee. It is a huge opportunity to be a voice for Minnesota exporters. And an exciting thing is that almost 800,000 jobs in Minnesota rely on trade. Actually, these jobs also pay about 18% higher wages. And so we should be promoting this at every opportunity we get. I know the Trans-Pacific Partnership may be caught up in a lame duck situation. I'm disappointed that both presidential candidates, quite honestly, aren't talking about the value of trade. But in that vacuum, I'm going to continue to step out and lead on trade. And I just want to mention, too, because you mentioned Donald Trump being the reason you're running for Congress. I'll just say that that's not the right reason to run for Congress. I'm running for Congress to get things done. We have 2 historically very unpopular candidates. I have endorsed neither, unlike Terri, who has endorsed one. And I am going to move forward just to keep working across the aisle. And if you're only running for Congress because the political environment is better because of Donald Trump, that's the wrong reason to run, and that's a cynical reason.
I anticipated your so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, let me tell you why Donald Trump has me in this race. Not because of the political wins, quite the opposite. I'm really concerned that a candidate such as Donald Trump has the potential to be president. And so I wanted to be talking to you, the public, and let you know how very dangerous this is. And I wanted to know that as a courageous leader, I will do everything I can to speak truth about that. So as he's insulted women and called them fat pigs and made fun of people with disabilities and smeared Gold Star families, and now talking about the spread of nuclear weapons and walking away from NATO, that is not somebody fit to be commander-in-chief, and that Congressman Paulson has not from day one denounced that man as a leader is not political courage. And so I believe it's our job to shape the political winds, not to stand back and understand how they're going and then act in response.
And your time is up, and let's stay with this topic. Why, you're going to get 2 minutes here in just a second. Let's quit circling around it. Do you or do you not support Donald Trump for president today?
Donald Trump has not earned my vote. The candidate I endorsed is not on the ballot this fall, and that's disappointing. The only candidate who has endorsed anyone, either presidential candidate, is Terri. I haven't endorsed either. And again, if you're running because Donald Trump is on the ballot, it's a pretty cynical reason to run. It's not the right reason to run. And I don't hear you denouncing Hillary Clinton when she says things about raising taxes $1.3 trillion, or raising spending another $2.3 trillion, or adding to our national debt. And I don't think any candidate necessarily has to be in a position of denouncing anyone running for president. But I did step out as early as last summer criticizing Donald Trump when he was saying inappropriate things about women, saying he was not a good messenger for our party, long before Terri ever got in the race. Again, the bottom line, I think, is the most important vote we cast. It's not going to be for president. It's going to be for who the speaker is. Whether it's Nancy Pelosi, who now Terri apparently says she's not going to necessarily vote for, which again, I'm very surprised. And I would just hope that she and I can both focus on our positive ideas. And in that vein, I would like to ask that both of us reject any spending brought on by outside groups. And Terri, I've heard you say you're an independent voice. I've heard you say you deny outside money that's spent in campaigns. And for that reason, I hope that you and I can agree to sign the People's Pledge. And in races across the country in the last few years, candidates have joined together to call off all outside money being spent as a part of the People's Pledge. And Elizabeth Warren and Scott Brown did it in Massachusetts. It actually works. And the pledge requires both candidates to sign a document calling off all outside independent expenditures, where a lot of negative ads come from. And this is under the control of each candidate. Because in order to keep candidates honest, if someone comes in and runs an ad on behalf of that candidate would have to donate half of that ad buy to charity. So it literally works. And the people in this district deserve a race that is going to be about issues and about our records. And by agreeing to this, we can be accountable to the race that we run. I've signed the pledge. I brought it with me today. And I hope that you will join me.
Right, well, we'll have a ceremony here in a minute to see what As a quick 30-second follow-up, you say Donald Trump has not earned your support yet. Is it possible he could earn your support? And what would that take? 30 seconds.
Well, it remains to be seen what's going to happen with either one of these candidates. Because I expect, like many of you in this room, you're not happy with either candidate. We have two candidates running that have higher unfavorables than favorables. And as someone who's raising 4 daughters, who wants to convince people that you're running for and be solution-oriented, it's pretty discouraging and it's not very enlightening or aspirational.
Is there anything specific he could do to earn your
There's
support?
nothing specific right now.
So, but you haven't ruled it out.
Nothing specific right now.
All right. Senator Bonoff, when you look across the stage, do you actually see Donald Trump standing here?
I don't think that Eric's personality is anything like Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump's shadow is hanging over Eric Paulson because he has not been forthright with you. He is going to vote for someone in that ballot box. I don't know who it is, but don't you deserve to know who your elected leader is going to vote for the President of the United States? I don't think this is a contest. You know, I did say I'm going to vote for her. I think he's dangerous. I think the things he says are erratic, reckless, insulting, and the thought of him as our commander-in-chief frightens me. And I don't understand why that's a cynical reason to get into the race. I don't have a cynical bone in my body. People can say I'm direct. They can say I might be, this or that. Ask my husband, who's right over there. But I'm not cynical. I'm not cynical. This isn't opportunistic. This is truly a citizen of this country concerned for our safety. With regard to that pledge, let's be reminded that when Congressman Paulson raised over $1 million last quarter, over 500,000 of it was from special interests, the Koch brothers, ExxonMobil, every corporate PAC that you can imagine. So you might say, well, that's direct money because I get to control how it's spent, but it is special interest money. And so that's another reason why I'm running. There's a group called End Citizens United who believes we must get rid of that special interest money. Whether it comes right in directly into your coffers or whether it comes from an independent expenditure, it is not a level playing field. For a challenger, I promise you, it's not a level playing field. I'm not complaining. I'm giving it everything I've got because this is important and you deserve a leader with the courage to express a vision, to tell you the truth about where she stands, and to put America first, and that's who I am and that's who I'll be for you. Thank you.
All right, Senator Bonoff, thank you very much. Staying along this same theme, Congressman Paulson, can you give me 3, you've given a couple of instances, but